I was on a spa vacation in Czech Republic with my family. Beautiful hotel, thermal baths, the whole thing, and I was crying. Not because something had happened on the trip, but because I just read the fine print of an investment I made years earlier, and I finally understood what it had actually cost me. Let me tell you how I got there. But first, I'm Sophia, I'm a doctor from Germany, and on this channel we explore the strategies of how to build wealth without giving up the good life. Okay, now how I got there. I had read books about money and financial freedom when I was still a teenager. So I knew from a young age that investing was important. But then life happened, university, medical school, and somehow every time the topic came up, there was always something else more important. And then my mom sent me a larger sum of money, and I wanted to be responsible with it. At that point, I had already procrastinated on money for years, so I was ready to finally do the right thing. Then conveniently, and now in hindsight, I do not think this was a coincidence, shortly after that money arrived in my bank account, I got a call from my local banker. He said, "Hello, we have this investment product that I think would be a very good fit for you. Shall I tell you more about this?" I said yes, we made an appointment, he explained the product, and it sounded good. There was a guaranteed interest component, and then there was a component that could be invested into the stock market, earning more returns. And I could even decide of how much to put into each. I could also decide what types of stocks. And besides a fixed monthly amount or half-yearly amount, I could invest additional money whenever I had it. And so I liked the flexibility, and I signed. And to be honest, I felt proud of myself because I had finally started investing. What I didn't know yet was what a good investment actually looked like. So a few years later, I was approaching the end of med school. I knew my first real income was coming, and so I wanted to be prepared because I was already starting to work later in life than most people do, and I just didn't want to mess it up. So I started reading and researching properly for the very first time. Amongst other things, I watched a German YouTube finance channel, and they recommended a book. The book was Investieren mit Indexfonds by Gerd Kommer. So it's something like Invest with Index Funds. Unfortunately, there's no English translation. And a friend of mine had recommended the same book, so I read it. And for the first time, I really understood investing in a broader sense, as in investment strategies and also all the traps there are. And the author for me was just very convincing, so I started to build my own portfolio based on this book. So it was just simple, low-cost index funds. The World Portfolio Strategy, you'll find a video I already made about that in the video description. Now back to Czech Republic. I was sitting at that beautiful hotel and I finally looked at that other investment that I had made years ago, and I started to read the fine print. I'm telling you, the fees were horrendous. There was a 5% initial sales charge. So 5% of my money gone immediately. Every additional deposit cost another 4%. So I was basically punished for investing more. Or in other words, they were giving themselves a nice cut of me being responsible. The stock investment component cost 1.5% per year, which may not sound like much, but it is triple of what I'm paying now for my investments. And most of this was before the investment made any return for me at all. When I added it up, this investment had cost me a 4-digit amount just in fees, which was a lot of money for me back then. When I found out, I got stomach ache. I cried for 2 days on an otherwise beautiful spa vacation with my family. I remember I researched online. I looked for reviews, for articles, for anyone who experienced the same thing. And all I found was one blog post from a German finance blog who has had a similar experience, and it made me feel less alone. My mom back then said, "Sieh es als Lehrgeld." See this as the cost of learning this lesson. And she was right, because I realized something that no one had told me before. I couldn't see what was wrong with that first investment, first because I didn't read the fine print, but second of all, I didn't understand what right looked like at the time yet. So what a good investment looked like. And the banker, he wasn't evil, he was just a salesman. A salesman whose interests were not aligned with mine. And I had no way of knowing that until I did. Okay, so let me unpack it and explain in detail what was wrong about this whole situation. Point one, what I definitely underestimated, and I think most people do, is that fees destroy more than you think. So the first thing is fees and why they are so much more damaging than they appear. When my banker said 1.5% per year, it sounded like nothing. But here's the thing that most people overlook. Fees don't just cost you money on that first investment, they also cost you the compounding growth on that money. So this isn't just a one-time thing. When you look at the annual return of that investment, you have to take that minus 1.5%. So this can mean tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of difference in wealth after several decades of investing. And it's funny because what to buy as an investment is actually not as important as most people think, like for how your whole portfolio is performing over time. But there are two components who have a tremendous impact on how the portfolio performs and therefore for wealth creation. And one of them is cost. The other one is asset allocation, but we'll talk about that another time. So imagine you invest $10,000 over 30 years and the market grows 7% per year on average, but we're taking this for the calculating example. Now with a 0.2 annual fee, which is common for a low-cost index fund, you end up with roughly $74,000. Now with a 1.5% annual fee, you end up with around $57,000. That is a difference of $17,000 from a number that almost sounded like nothing, right? And now imagine you're not just investing $10,000, right? The goal is to invest hundreds of thousands of dollars. So can you see what a difference this makes for your wealth? And when you look at my example of the investment, this doesn't even account for the 5% initial sales charge and the 4% on every additional deposit. So fees are a cost that drag on your wealth, and the higher they are, the more they take. So please do not underestimate fees. Okay, the second thing is, and I want to say this carefully, your banker is probably not a bad person, mine wasn't, but the system he or she operates in just creates a conflict of interest that most people are never told about. Because banks and financial advisors who sell investment products like mine, they are often paid through commissions or also margins built into the product, which means the moment he signs me, he's making money. And that doesn't give him an incentive to really look if this product is right for me. It gives him the incentive of making money, right? Are you guys getting this? And then obviously the higher the fee, the more they earn. So the incentive for them is to recommend what's most profitable for them and not necessarily what is optimal for you. And this is not a conspiracy, this is just how the model works. And then the problem is, if you don't know this like I didn't when I walked into his office, you walk into that meeting trusting the person sitting across from you has your best interest at heart. They might be kind, they might be competent, they might even genuinely believe in the product, but structurally their interests and yours are just pointing into different directions. By the way, if you want to know how I build my own system that builds wealth automatically without relying on someone else's advice, I have a free live web class where I go more into detail. You'll find the link down below. Now back to point 3. And this is about understanding what a good investment looks like. So the solution here is not distrust, it's actually education. Because when you think about it, you cannot really evaluate an offer when you do not have a reference point. So before I read that book from Gerd Kommer, I had no reference point. The banker's product sounded reasonable because I had nothing to compare it to. But then once I understood how simple and easy those low-cost, globally diversified index funds are, the comparison became obvious. Because then I had one product, one fee that was in the range of 0 point something % per year. And the other one was several products bundled into one with a very complex fee structure and several different types of fees, right? So in my very first investment I told you about, the fees were too high, the structure was too complex, and the incentives were wrong. So then the reference point changes everything. And let me tell you, you do not have to become a financial expert. You just need a basic understanding of what a good investment looks like. And once you have that, the noise becomes much easier to filter. As you probably can tell right now, I'm a big fan of index funds because when chosen right, they're very well diversified and therefore decrease the risk. And at the same time, they're very low in cost. And that alone is a big, big plus. I also have a video on this channel about what index funds are and how they work. I will link it at the end of the video. And if there's one thing I want you to take away from today, is if you haven't started yet, or if you're not sure if what you already have is actually working for you, a really important thing is to understand what right really looks like. Because otherwise you cannot see the problem until you do. My mom called it Lehrgeld, and I would rather you didn't have to pay it. Alright, if you're still here, thank you for watching this far. The investing video is linked here. Also, you're welcome to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.